a ballad of bureaucracy and bagpipes, a faint, discordant melody, like an out-of-tune guitar riff, rattled the air, followed by a single, clumsy thunk. Narrator. In the realm of Melodia, magic was woven from music, a vibrant tapestry of melody, harmony, and rhythm. The land shimmered with it. Rivers sang in bass tones, and mountains hummed like a choir of ancient rock. It was a world of shimmering light motes and self-playing flutes. It was also a world where Leo's alarm clock was a particularly aggressive rooster named Bartholomew, who stood 4 feet tall with fiery red plumage and an air of perpetual self-importance. Bartholomew let out a sound like a kazoo being attacked by a bagpipe. Bartholomew. Magic is an art, wee man. My call to the sun is a symphony of the soul. It's not my fault your soul is a damp napkin. Leo. Groggy and grumbling, Leo said, Barty, that's a magical code violation. You're waking the enchanted toadstools and sounding like a kazoo full of gravel. Leo groaned and sat up on his lumpy mattress. His cottage was a study in magical disrepair. The kitchen sink sang a mournful blues riff whenever it leaked, and the front door hummed a slightly off-key rendition of a pop song from his old world. He wasn't a wizard or a bard. He was a magical disruption specialist. Mostly, he just tuned things and told people their magic was broken because they forgot to practice. He shuffled to the kitchen and stared at his one prized possession, a beat-up 6-string electric guitar. It was a relic from a time before he was accidentally pulled into Melodia, and the only thing that hadn't been replaced by a magical equivalent. He picked it up and played a simple, familiar C chord. The clean, resonant sound of the C chord filled the room. A faint chime of bells followed. The chaotic hum of his cottage quieted instantly. The leaky sink stopped its blues tune. The door's pop song was replaced by a soft, pleasant hum. Leo sighed contentedly. He wasn't a hero, but he could make things work. His moment of peace was shattered by a frantic, high-pitched rapping on his front door, a rhythm that was a panicked bossa nova drum fill. Leo mutters to himself, Oh, great. The front door is now drumming a frantic bossa nova. Someone's in a hurry. He opened the door to find a dignitary from the royal court. The dignitary was a short, plump man with a face the color of a bruised plum, wearing robes so starched they made a crinkling sound with every shuddering breath he took. His name was Thaddeus, and he was currently panting like a dog that had just run a marathon up a mountain made of molasses. Thaddeus. Gasping and out of breath, Thaddeus spoke. Specialist? Leo? The scepter? It's gone. And now, the magic. It's unraveling. The enchanted fountains are spitting mud. The singing trees are sighing mournfully. And the royal guard's enchanted armor is producing the sound of a startled goose. A startled goose squawked, followed by a metallic clanking. Leo. So let me get this straight. The kingdom's core magic is on the fritz, and the royal court's top wizards, who are supposed to be the best of the best, can't fix it? Thaddeus's plum-colored face turned a shade of deep purple. Thaddeus. We have tried. The Grand Archmelodist suggested a complex counter-ritual using a choir of enchanted sparrows. It only resulted in a flock of slightly confused finches and a mild case of magical static electricity in the throne room. You're our last hope. Leo stared blankly. He looked at his guitar, then at the frantic dignitary. A rescue mission? Him? He was a guy who just wanted to play some blues riffs and fix leaky sinks. He sighed. It was going to be one of those days. Part 2. The Unlikely Companions. It took a full 10 minutes of Thaddeus's pleading, gasping, and increasingly dire warnings about the royal garden gnomes singing dirges about the king's taxes before Leo finally agreed. Leo. Fine. But if I get arrested for unauthorized melodic interference, I'm telling them you made me. Thaddeus, looking like he'd just been offered a cool drink in a desert, let out a shuddering breath of pure relief. Thaddeus. Oh, bless you, specialist. You shall be rewarded with a bountiful stipend. The king has also provided a companion for the road. A faint rustling sound came from behind the dignitary, followed by a metallic clink. Thaddeus stepped aside to reveal a large, scruffy badger, about the size of a big dog. Its fur was matted with bits of moss and twigs. It had one eye that looked perpetually closed, and the other was a bright, curious green. Strapped to its back was a miniature, but very sharp-looking sword. In its paws, it clutched a half-empty bottle of some suspiciously purple liquid. The creature burped loudly, a sound that somehow produced a faint, wavering harmonica note. Pipsqueak. Slurring his words, Pipsqueak said, "Oh, shucks. I thought I put that away. The name's Pipsqueak. What's yours, handsome?" Leo. Leo blinked and raised an eyebrow. "So his name is Pipsqueak. He's a lush? And he carries a sword? This is the king's idea of a valuable asset?" Thaddeus. Whispering conspiratorially, Thaddeus said, "He is surprisingly effective. The king calls him a street-level troubleshooter and a prodigious forager of enchanted mushrooms. A useful skill, as our journey will take us through the treacherous, wailing marshes." With a final nervous nod, Thaddeus scampered off in a flurry of crackling robes. Leo was left standing on his porch, holding his electric guitar, staring at a drunk badger with a tiny sword, and contemplating a trip to a place called the Wailing Marshes. He slung his guitar case over his shoulder, the weight of the old instrument a familiar comfort. He'd fixed a lot of magical problems in his time, but this one felt different. This one felt like a bad album. The two of them began their journey. The Wailing Marshes were less wailing and more squelching. It was a miserable, wet slog, the air thick with the buzzing of magically charged mosquitoes. As they finally saw solid ground ahead, they were stopped by a checkpoint. Two gnomes, in pristine, starched uniforms, stood behind a tiny desk holding an enormous ledger. Gnome 1. "State your business. And have your papers ready." Leo. "We're on a royal errand to retrieve the harmonic scepter." Gnome 2. "Scepter? That's a Class C minor violation of the Rhythmic Stability Accord, as defined in Section 7.b, Subsection 4 of the Code. That's a 300 guilder fine and a 10-day waiting period. The disruption of magic is causing severe bureaucratic backlog." Leo. "We don't have time for that. The kingdom is in chaos." Gnome 1. "Chaos is a Class B major violation, sir. An additional 500 guilder fine." As the gnomes rattled off fines, Pipsqueak, seemingly sobered by the bureaucratic drone, began to move. He produced a series of complex, soothing notes, a sweet lullaby-like melody, from a glockenspiel that hung in the air like perfume. The gnomes looked from their ledger to the badger, their eyes glazing over. Gnome 1. "Drowsy," the gnome said. "That's a very pleasant tune. A rare A-flat major. No melodic interference here." As Leo engaged the now hypnotized gnomes in a conversation about the finer points of pop punk, Pipsqueak expertly slipped a paw into the first gnome's pocket and, with a silent snick, withdrew a fat, official-looking stamp. A moment later, he did the same to the second gnome, grabbing a stack of what looked like blank permits. He then quietly produced a single, high, clear note, as if to say, "Done." Leo. "Never mind. We seem to have found the correct forms, after all. Thank you for your service." They left the drowsy gnomes to their peaceful slumber, Pipsqueak now looking slightly more mischievous. Pipsqueak. Pipsqueak belched loudly, producing a low, muffled bass note. "Heh, found some shiny things, too." He dropped a handful of coins into Leo's hand. Leo just shook his head and kept walking toward the mountains. Part 3. The Silent Sorceress. The mountain fortress was not a fortress at all. It was a cozy cottage carved into the side of a cliff, humming with an almost imperceptible magical quiet. A frail, kind-eyed old woman answered the door, her long gray hair braided with silver chimes that didn't make a sound. She was Elara, the so-called silent sorceress. Elara. "I'm so sorry, children. I can't help you. The noise, it's all so loud. I just wanted some peace. I didn't steal your scepter. I just borrowed it." She led them into a small, quiet living room. On a pedestal sat a shimmering, magically soundproof cabinet, its surface swirling with tiny, silent motes of light. The harmonic scepter was inside, still and inert. Ilara, its constant hum, it was like a million fingernails on a chalkboard. I put it in here. It's a cabinet of silence. Only a specific harmony can open it. She hummed a short, complex melody. Leo immediately recognized the pattern. Leo, that's a 12-tone serialism pattern. It's a completely mathematical, non-melodic progression. It's an anti-magic. Ilara, exactly. I had to build a lock that couldn't be opened by your loud, chaotic music. It's the only piece I get. Leo realized the scepter wasn't just misplaced. It was being actively hidden from the very world that needed it. Ilara hummed the key one more time, and Leo took out his guitar. He couldn't play those complex microtones, but he knew how to improvise. He played the chord progression from a simple, familiar pop song from his world. The simple, familiar C-G-A-M-F pop chord progression on a clean electric guitar filled the air. The cabinet did not open. Ilara, that's not quite right. It needs discord. You're playing too purely. The lock responds to dissonance. Leo's mind raced. He thought about the angry feedback of a broken amplifier, the screech of a dying speaker, the sound of a beginner learning a new song. He had to play something truly horrible. Part 4, Leo's Moment. As they stepped back outside, a terrible, grinding cacophony came from above. The mountain itself seemed to shudder. From a cave high on the mountain, an army of stone golems lumbered down, their movements producing a loud, grinding, grating noise. Ilara, oh dear, my security, I forgot. They are golems, powered by negative sonic energy. They are meant to guard the peace. They can only be defeated by a sound so ugly, so utterly chaotic, it breaks their magical bonds. Leo. Leo stared at his guitar. Well, that's me. He plugged his guitar into a small, portable magical amplifier. Pipsqueak, who had been passed out on the front lawn, suddenly came to with a start. Pipsqueak. Groggily, Pipsqueak said, "What? Was that terrible noise? Is the king's tax collector here?" Leo positioned himself in front of the golems. He had to be louder than their grinding. He turned the amp all the way up. The air crackled with magical energy. He slammed his hand down on the fretboard, hitting every string at once, and bent the whammy bar for a piercing, discordant wail. The sustained, loud, ugly, high-pitched feedback from his guitar was a sonic weapon, a screeching wail that tore at the air itself. It wasn't a chord, it was a wound. The golems began to crack. Bits of rock flaked off, and the grinding noise they made started to stutter. Leo grinned and hit another, even more terrible chord. A second, even more terrible chord, maybe a low, ugly drone, erupted from the guitar. The golems shuddered, groaned, and with a final, painful groan of twisting stone, they crumbled into piles of dust. The cabinet door behind them shimmered, then slowly swung open with a faint whoosh. The scepter, a large, beautiful staff of polished wood and gleaming metal, was there. Leo carefully picked it up. It was silent. He tried to hum a simple note, but nothing happened. The harmonic scepter was completely inert. Leo. It's broken. Pipsqueak. Stumbling over, Pipsqueak said, "No, it's just asleep. It's been in that noise-proof box. It needs a wee wake-up call." Part 5. The grand finale. The trip back was fraught with a new kind of panic. Thaddeus, who had met them at the edge of the wailing marshes, was now a bundle of nerves. Thaddeus. It's getting worse. The Royal Opera House is only playing the sound of a single, out-of-tune kazoo. The king. He's losing his nerve. Leo, holding the silent scepter, realized the problem wasn't that it was broken. It was that it was tired. It needed a new kind of magic, a different frequency. The magic of MELODIA was too high, too melodic, too perfect. The scepter was accustomed to a different, more grounded, more human sound. As they reached the city gates, Leo asked Thaddeus to gather a crowd. He needed people to hear what he was about to do. The king, standing on the steps of the royal court, looked on in despair. Leo stood in front of the crowd, facing the king. He held his electric guitar in one hand and the silent scepter in the other. He plugged the guitar cable into a small port on the scepter's base. He then played a simple, powerful, and soulful blues riff. The powerful, soulful blues guitar riff, slow and steady, did not come from his amp. It came from the scepter. The wood began to hum, a deep, resonant tone. The metal began to glow, and a beautiful blue light pulsed with the rhythm of his music. The scepter was absorbing the energy of his music, of his blues, the sound of a human soul, not perfect or melodic, but raw and honest. As he continued to play, the scepter pulsed with a rhythm that spread through the entire kingdom. The fountains began to sing again, the trees hummed with happiness, and the royal guard's armor now produced the sound of a crisp, military drumbeat. The kingdom's magic was not just restored, it was stronger, more soulful, and more vibrant than before. The king, his face beaming, rushed down the stairs. King, Specialist Leo, you've saved us all. A post at the royal court is yours. You shall be the royal chief harmonic consultant. Leo smiled, shaking his head. He looked down at Pipsqueak, who was now expertly picking a coin from the king's royal robes. Leo, thanks, Your Majesty, but I think I'll stick to what I know. I've got a cottage with a leaky sink that needs a good tune-up. But if you ever need a little rhythm and soul in your life, you know where to find me. With that, Leo turned and walked away, his faithful badger at his side. He wasn't a wizard or a bard. He was a magical disruption specialist. And he knew that a little blues could fix anything. A final, gentle, soulful guitar chord faded out into the quiet.